everyone, Pushinguproses here, and welcome to the first part of my Quest for Glory retrospective. I am very eager to discuss this series because the last time I did was 8 years ago. You may recall that the very first thing I uploaded to my channel was a Quest for Glory 1 Let's Play. It was only yesterday that I was wearing that horrible Logitech headset and uploading subpar quality footage.
Hey everyone, Pushinguproses here, attempting my first Let's Play. Today I'm going to be playing Quest for Glory 1, So You Want to Be a Hero.
I also have a pretty bad track record when it comes to covering games in order. Overall, I think it's okay to bounce around in many of the Sierra collections, especially if they're really good as a standalone experience. I found it pretty easy to cover the King's Quest titles out of order, and I covered Space Quest 1, hopped to 6, then promptly abandoned the rest. But for Quest for Glory, I'm going to try really hard to cover these in their original sequence. It may not happen, but dag blam it, I'm gonna try, because I think there are a few important reasons to not skip around. Let's start with Quest for Glory 1, So You Want to Be a Hero, the first in the line of 5 games developed by Sierra and designed by Lori and Corey Cole. It was originally titled Hero's Quest, and you can find boxes that still use this title, but it was changed to Quest for Glory because Milton Bradley trademarked the name Hero Quest for their own completely unrelated game. The Coles made many contributions to the game industry, but their biggest by far was the Quest for Glory franchise. Before joining Sierra, they ran fantasy campaigns for years, which lent a lot of inspiration to the mechanics and rules of Quest for Glory. And Lori Cole even created a roleplay newsletter called The Spellbook, so it was clear they had a love for the genre. So You Want to Be a Hero has a unique blend of styles going on, but it's mostly known as an adventure RPG. When you boot up the game, you get a super cool dragon animation. It's like the most massive dragon I've ever seen in my life, and wait a minute, this isn't about a dragon. This literally just occurred to me. The box art boasts this insane-looking reptile creature, and there are some lizard-like enemies, but the cover art definitely does not reflect the main story, which I will get into later. Before we can do anything, we must create our character. After misrepresenting dragon leaves, you get to choose your class: fighter, magic user, or thief. Aspects of the story and how you complete puzzles change depending on what you pick. I always choose the thief because it opens up access to the Thieves Guild, and because I love taking stuff that isn't mine. After you choose your class, you get to fill out your character sheet, which is pretty rudimentary in terms of RPGs, especially compared to what you can do in tabletop games, but it works decent enough, and it was actually my introduction to any RPG mechanic. I named my character Robert Smith because clearly he is the hero we all need, and because I chose Thief, I tried to distribute my points accordingly, giving some to stealth, lockpicking, all that jazz. Now let's take a look at the story, which is not about a dragon. You, the hero, travel to the quaint town of Spielberg after recently graduating from the famous Adventurers Correspondence School. What a coincidence! Spielberg is on hard times and happens to need a hero, so you take on the responsibility. Just look at it as your first job out of college. Recently, the town has been cursed by the witch Baba Yaga. The Baron's children are missing, which is why there is such a severe lack of potential heroes, and the town has been taken over by brigands, so I hope you paid attention in class because there's a lot to fix. During your journey, you'll meet many characters that can push you in the right direction. The Guildmaster is a person of note, as are Erasmus and Fenris, a wizard and rat team who lives in the magical house to the north. There's always a healer in these games, good for buying potions and healing items, and we also meet many mythological creatures, like the Meeps at the Meeps Peep, curious fairies who just want to dance, and the Antwerp. Actually, don't piss off the Antwerp. We learn that the Baron's children are not missing per se, but have fallen victim to Baba Yaga's curse, so it's our job to free them and somehow encourage Baba Yaga to leave. Spielberg is the name of a city in Austria, spelled with an E instead of a U, but this city is fictionalized. It is clearly meant to be a European city though. All of the Quest for Glories take place in different fictionalized towns loosely based on real places. The original concept, imagined by Lori and Corey Cole, involved 4 games that follow 4 themes. The themes were going to be season, mythology, direction, and element. For example, So You Want to Be a Hero takes place in the northern Germany, according to Corey Cole. The element is earth, the season is spring, and its central mythology is inspired by Germanic folklore. Here is a handy chart detailing the sequels and their themes. At some point during development, the Coles realized they needed a 5th title to connect the series, and thus Wages of War was developed to bridge some of those plot holes. So if it seems like Wages of War came out of nowhere, it's because it was not part of the original plan. Another major theme is the growth of your character, who starts starts out with limited abilities, but works his way up to becoming a master of his skills, earning the respect of everyone you meet. These stories were plotted out far in advance, which works for the innovative for the time mechanic of importing your character into the sequels, bringing along skills and experience with you. More so than other franchises, I think it makes a lot of sense to play these in order so you can follow your character's evolution, and because there are recurring characters that won't make sense to you later on. The second Quest for Glory game I played was Dragonfire, the last game, and characters were all like, "Hey there, hero, nice to see you again," and I was like, what the fuck is he talking about? And wait, I'm having an epiphany. Dragonfire, it's about a dragon. If this series was planned in advance, then maybe this dragon is foreshadowing. Maybe this dragon is the same one in Dragonfire. Holy shit. Anyway, you, the hero, do not have any distinctive personality traits. You do, however, have a pair of hot pink tights and a fabulous cape, which is all you really need. The character, with the exception of questionable fashion, is supposed to be rather bland. Because this is an RPG, you're supposed to take on the personality of the character. The hero is you. You're the hero now, dog. In fact, you don't even have much dialogue besides answering a few simple questions here and there. So how do we play this game? Your best bet is to talk to everyone you come across, asking them questions about the town's current predicament. Unlike the King's Quest series, which also has an emphasis on fantasy and hero tropes, the dialogue in Quest for Glory is extremely important, and you aren't going to get anywhere without prodding people for information. Previously, a lot of Sierra games were not dialogue heavy. Characters were present, but were often useless. Quest for Glory relies on asking questions, and it's how you digest the story and figure out what you should be doing. I love how this works. I love talking to the characters, asking them questions, finding new ones throughout the settings, and because there is a day-to-night mechanic, some characters have their own schedules and change location. You're required to do things both during the day and at night. In fact, some puzzles have to be done at very specific times. As you go around talking to characters, you can and should complete quests that you can find posted on the wall in the Adventurers Guild. As you go along helping people, you have to complete a series of inventory object puzzles to progress and gather the information needed to save the Baron's children and deal with Baba Yaga, who is a supernatural, witch-like being from Slavic folklore. I like that the manual describes it like this. You have to deal with the evil witch. It makes it sound like you have to tolerate an annoying family member or something. Ugh, that Baba Yaga. I have so many other things to do, like robbing people's houses and sneaking around town in a totally discreet manner, and now I have to deal with her. So annoying. One of my favorite characters to talk to is this cute little skull who guards the door to Baba Yaga's hut. He's jealous of the other skulls who have glowing eyes and wants me to find a gem so he can look as intimidating as the others. I ended up making a deal with him so I could get into the hut. Besides, all skulls deserve glowing eyes. I couldn't leave him hanging. To complete these puzzles, you also have to up your stats so you can actually have the different abilities it takes to perform them. For example, one of my skills is lockpicking. I can raise that stat by attempting to pick a lock over and over again until it works. You can also pick your nose, but if your skill is too low, you'll fail and hemorrhage to death. If your skill is high, you can successfully open your nose. No blocked airways in this nasal passage. Obviously, the skills you want to raise depend on the class you choose. So since I'm a thief, I focused on climbing and sneaking, meaning that I found a single tree and climbed it to grind my stats until I could do it. I also snuck everywhere I went. You're supposed to be practicing your skills every day, but the stealth skill specifically took forever to grind, and I got tired of getting attacked by enemies while I was sneaking. Clearly, if you're a fighter, it's a bit easier to deal with these things, which you run into anytime you're on certain parts of the map. But I ended up running away from most of the higher level enemies because I didn't have a great weapon for it. I cannot tell you how many times I had to run away, and because this map is huge and there are many screens you could get attacked on, it started getting tedious and annoying. The sneaking also got really time consuming, and by the end I didn't have enough skill points to get past this really angry looking minotaur, so I cheated. Sorry. The stat grinding did improve throughout the series. It's probably the most grueling in this title. It's not hard, but it's also not terribly enjoyable, and I don't think it adds anything to the experience, because grinding really just consists of repeating something over and over, oftentimes in the same spot until you can do it. I just stand there and mash F3 until I get the skill where it needs to be. This does take up stamina, but you can rest for a bit then continue to grind. I do like the idea of having specific skills to aid me with puzzles, and I do love that the different classes have different actions. As mentioned, if you play as a thief, you get access to the Thieves Guild, something that is not available to the fighter or the magic user. That doesn't mean that you can't learn skills that those other classes use. If you choose a thief, you can still learn a little magic, and there are ways to up your strength and weapon use as well, but the storylines and quests do change depending on your choice. For example, if you choose magic user, you can learn thief skills, but you will still get those side stories intended for the magic user class. Even though battling is tough as this class, I do recommend playing as a thief so you can experience robbing people's houses. And remember to get your license. You cannot practice thievery without a license. We may be thieves, but we do have standards. The humor is cheeky, full of puns, and quite a bit more developed than other Sierra games, and when I say that, what I really mean is that it has more groan-worthy elements and shoddy wordplay. The characters are fun to talk to because they have distinct personalities and detailed dialogue trees, which is something that you want in an RPG. It also has what I call the cozy cottage phenomenon, which I describe as a comfortable, warm, or nostalgic feeling I get from well-designed settings, specifically from the fantasy genre. Because you spend so much time in these settings and with these characters, it becomes familiar. It seems to instill nostalgia even if you have no previous experience with the game. I know I compare and contrast Quest for Glory with the King's Quest series more than anything else, but it's because I think they have the most in common, and it's a good way to really see and understand why Quest for Glory has a more solid design. King's Quest uses fantasy in a more sporadic way, it sprinkles in various mythologies randomly, and I feel like they don't add too much to the plot. It's just there. But the folklore and fairy tale aspects used in Quest for Glory are woven throughout and elevate the main story. Look, it's like ordering a burger where the cheese is cooked throughout the meat. Now the cheese is a part of the burger, unlike putting a slice of cheese directly on top of the burger and having it be a completely separate element from the whole entire meal. I mean, that makes sense, right? You see, the cheese represents the folklore. Here's a better example that doesn't use food metaphors. In King's Quest II, you happen to find the witch Hagatha's cave. You can't talk to her, in fact, you don't have to kill her or interact with her. She does act as a threat throughout your journey, but she doesn't drive the narrative. In Quest for Glory, Baba Yaga is an integral part of the plot, and when you find her, you have interactions and neat little animations that reinforce the story. The fairy tale inspired characters play a big part of the Quest for Glory universe, which is why they recur throughout all of the games. In a lot of ways, the series really outperforms a lot of the Sierra franchises. Interestingly, I still have more fondness for certain King's Quest and Space Quest titles, but if I'm honest, this franchise has way more going on and was very ambitious for 1989. Even though there are a lot of positives, there are also some negatives worth bringing up. Keep in mind, this is still a Sierra adventure game. There are going to be ways to fuck up and a million ways to die. You could probably predict some of these deaths though, and I typically knew which points to save at before experimenting with some weird character or entering a dangerous looking area. I was pretty shocked when I accidentally walked into someone's knife though. Wow. Just wow. I timed that perfectly. It's almost impressive. Another thing to keep in mind is that this title was developed during a time where manuals and documentation were still very important to review before diving into the gameplay. I think in modern times, because a lot of games are digital, reading the instructions or getting tips on how to play the game is no longer common. This might not even be a con exactly, more of an anachronism to keep in mind if you play this today. The manual gives you some backstory, tips on commands you might want to use, and often will provide a mini walkthrough to help get you started. If you boot up Quest for Glory without consulting the manual, you might not know what to do, especially if you're new to the adventure genre, so it's important to use some of those external documents that were intended to help the player. It's also wise to use a map because it's pretty sizable. Here's my pathetic attempt at drawing my own map as I was exploring. I eventually got attacked by an enemy and had to escape due to low HP, and when this happens, our character just runs off all willy-nilly in a random direction. After that, I got lost, fed up, and referred to a map online instead. Besides, we all know this was not going anywhere. Included in the game's box alongside the manual is the Famous Adventurer's Correspondence School booklet, which has comical tidbits on becoming a hero and provides further detail about the 3 classes you can choose from. I'd like to add that I appreciate extra goodies like this. It really helps me to engage more with the game and get a good grasp on its tone. Reminds me of being excited about the special features on a DVD. That was one of the most exciting things about big box PC games, and Sierra always went above and beyond when it came to bonus material. The end of this game goes all slapstick on us and becomes this rather frantic practice in timed puzzles, but eventually, if you play your cards right, you'll find the Baron's lost children and rid Spielberg from Baba Yaga and the curse she put on the entire town. Too bad we also robbed the town blind, but hey, would you rather be broke or curse-free? I even robbed the sheriff's house, but despite that, a celebration is held for us. Look at this guy with his amazing cartwheels. And he just keeps going. That man has never stopped cartwheeling. The end sees Robert Smith venturing forth to a land known as Shapir, where you can continue your role as hero. I am certainly not done with Robert Smith, so I will be using him as we journey on. It's not mandatory, of course. If you want to start a brand new character with new stats, you can, but I like the option to import my character. We've spent so much time together, throwing daggers at ogres, walking in front of knives, sneaking. We have so many more houses to rob together. You and me, Robert Smith. It's just like heaven. There's also a VGA version available, but I prefer the parser command version just a bit more. There's something more realistic and charming to me about typing out the questions in conversation as opposed to getting a list of topics to choose from. Makes me feel like I have more control, but if that's really not your jam, by all means, go for it. The gameplay in this version definitely has some superior aspects, it looks fantastic, and I find exploring the map much more tolerable. I hope you enjoyed this look back at Quest for Glory 1, but this isn't the end. Strap in because it's about to get hot. In the next video, we are going to be looking at Quest for Glory 2, Trial by Fire. Hey everyone, thanks for watching the first part of my Quest for Glory retrospective. Keep an eye out for future episodes, and if you want to follow my progress, there are links to my social media pages in the description. I don't really rob houses in real life, so if you want to support the show, consider becoming a patron of mine. As always, I will see you guys in the next one.